The impudence, the audacity, the unmitigated gall of those knuckleheads of liberty podcasters, daring to voice opinions outside the mainstream of accepted thought. Listen if you dare. It's angry, it's funny, it's even sometimes sad, but it's always based on freedom and justice, as you will see. Here's our host, Jason McPhee.
Welcome to the Knuckleheads of Liberty. We're coming at you on January 16th, 2023. And, boy, I tell you, it seems like every time government's doing something, you're always wondering if, those crazy guys running things, if those are the right hands to be running things. And so we're going to get into a few different issues on the show of all the things we think they're kind of making a mess of. But before we get into that, let me introduce you to our panel. In our upper left-hand corner, we have Leon the Word Brathwaite, last word in Liberty. He is a retired engineer in the state of California. In our lower left-hand corner, we have our screaming eagle of freedom, Tim Everett. He is a pilot in the state of California. In our upper right-hand corner, we have a special guest today. He is Rob Chatfield, and he is president and CEO of the Free to Choose Network. And the Free to Choose Network, that is the network dedicated to the ideas of Milton Friedman. In fact, James, let me bring that up real quick just so people can see what that is and where they can go to find out a little bit more about that stuff. And then, by the way, we just interviewed Rob on a recent show, and you can go check out more details about the Free to Choose Network on that show as well. And my name's Jason McPhee, and I'll be your host today. So let's jump right into it. Boy, I tell you, if the war in Ukraine doesn't give you some doubts about what we're doing with our money and really, what's right with everything we're doing, I don't know what does. And I tell you, it seems like every time we turn around, the government is spending a ridiculous amount of money on who knows what. I mean, they always find something to spend the money on. And if you look at this graphic that Statista had, the military aid that's going to Ukraine, well, I tell you, it looks like, once again, the United States is very generous, people like Biden, in reaching into our pockets to pay for what's happening over in Ukraine. That does bring up some questions, too. Is this, it's in the order, I guess Reason had an article last year that says it's in the order of 130 million a day that we're spending on this effort. But that's bringing up some questions as well, as are they even tracking this stuff right? I mean, we're starting to hear issues like, the money goes over there, the weapons go over there, and then they just sort of disappear. And then maybe even pop up in other places of the world in some cases. So what do you guys think about this? It just seems like, is this just another money pit that we're finding a way to create ways to spend more money? What do you guys think?
I have not seen a pallet of cash, though, like we saw in the Obama era going to the Middle East. So I got to guess this is at least one step above what we had beforehand. So.
Yeah, I do remember there were pallets of cash that were being sent to Iraq too. When all of that stuff was going on, it was just disappearing. But sorry, Tim, you were going to jump in there.
Today they'll want it to be digital currency. Apparently, government digital currency. I'm talking about, not crypto or any of that. But and the only thing I would say is, I'm glad that the Biden administration wants to regulate and have lots of oversight over us mere tax-paying minions like myself in regards to their acquiring of firearms. And however, when it comes to sending missiles and rockets to Ukraine, no issue whatsoever.
Well, it's funny, too, to follow up on that. We talked about this issue on the show before. When the war started, we were literally sending over like crates of AK-47s, I think, and handing them out to the citizens there and saying what a wonderful thing that was to arm the citizens there. And yet, we're kind of doing the opposite here.
Of course. With the assault weapons. And but did that come from the AK-47s? I mean, I thought we'd send them some M4s, sure. But I don't know.
Maybe
I
so. I
saw,
thought the pictures I saw were citizens holding up these guns, and I thought they said either
Yeah,
we're paying for them or we're sending them. I can't remember which.
I
the
don't
issue
think,
was.
honestly, I don't think we send AK-47s, to be honest, Jason.
Okay.
I mean, but there were pictures of them holding up these AK-47s. I don't think we send that.
Yeah.
We send other
That
stuff.
brings up a good point though, Jason, which is how are we accounting for this? Because like if this is just old inventory that's been sitting around that we've been trying to get rid of for decades because we haven't had a good war around here, then maybe this is, the accounting works out where it sounds like it's a big number, but it's just really stale equipment that we weren't going to use anyway. So
Yeah.
But there's a fundamental issue here that I mean, besides everything that's been raised, but there's a fundamental issue here that I have a real problem with, which is here we are spending gobs of money to defend the borders of Ukraine, to defend the sovereignty of Ukraine, and we seem incapable of spending any sort of money to defend our own sovereignty when we have millions of people pouring across our southern border. I mean, I'm not part of the open borders crowd. I am not at all. Okay, I believe in sovereignty. But if we're going to have a country, I do not see how we do not defend our borders. And we are spending gobs of money defending the borders and sovereignty of Ukraine. Now, I believe in the projection of the power of the military power of the United States on net. I think it's a good thing. However, this gross incompetence that is going on at our own border, and we are spending no money to defend it and to stop these people from walking across our borders, to me, is a dereliction of duty on behalf of the administration. Somebody should be impeached for this thing.
Well, it's funny
hypocrisy.
too.
Is Leon even legal in this country? I gotta ask.
Don't tell anybody. Don't tell anybody.
Actually, Leon's told us the story before. Wasn't it a long line, a long process that you went through to become a citizen here?
16 years. 16 years.
Okay. Which is kind of crazy. I mean, I'd love to have a much
that's crazy.
cleaner process to bring somebody who is willing to support themselves over here. In fact, that was it's funny. I was watching a little bit of the Free to Choose that was talking about that episode the other day, and it was funny because it was I think it was about protecting the worker, where they were literally talking about unions and stuff, and Milton Friedman and Walter.
Walter Williams.
Walter Williams, that's it. And they were both saying that, essentially, look, you just can't have a welfare state and open borders. And so they were kind of I mean, they would much prefer just to, kind of push down that welfare state and have them come over legally. But it was the issue was, well, if they're illegal is the way they were seeing it, at least they're not able to draw from the welfare. I don't even know if that's true anymore.
No, I think you get to check. You get to check when you show up now, Jason. So.
Yeah. People walking across the border and they're getting all sorts of quote unquote free stuff, all kind of stuff, and not only that, the children get to go to school, which is burdening taxpayers. Somebody got to pay for this stuff. Okay.
Yeah.
Now, I mean, I'm all for educating children and all that. But don't just walk across the border and telling me you have rights here. Come on.
Yeah. Well, it certainly is an issue where we seem to kind of have funny ways about where we decide to spend our resources.
But the part I was going to say that I look at is so the war will end at some point, Ukraine and Russia. That war will end. And it's not like the government, having spent that money, is now going to say, oh, well, we can now reduce the budget by that amount of money. They're going to keep spending the money somewhere. That's where I go with what Leon's saying. Boy, imagine if we just spent that money all over Latin America, Central America, et cetera, trying to improve conditions at the places where the people are at, then you may end up, and again, I'm a huge open immigration guy, but for the same reasons Jason was talking about. I'm not a welfare state guy. But if you want to come here and make a better life for yourself, I'm all for that. Those are the people you certainly want walking through the doors or through the across the borders of our country. But when you start looking at the rationale and the reason for it, it's because conditions are terrible where they're at. Opportunity is here. It's still the land of opportunity, no matter what anybody says. But it's that welfare state mentality in terms of show up and get your welcome bag. That's what we have to take out of that equation.
Yeah, and for anybody who doubts that, all you have to do is go back and look at the, I believe it was it's either the 2016 or 2020 presidential primaries. I think it was the 2020 presidential primaries, and the Democrats were asked the question: should immigrants who show up here have free health care? And every single one of them said yes, that it was a right of anybody who shows up here. Well, I mean, it's a nice thought, but it also is a benefit that you are literally saying, doesn't matter whether you're legal, illegal, just come here and you get free health care. And I mean, that's kind of like an incentive that sort of skews the system. So anyways, that's just
yeah, they're using that word free again.
There we go. Free.
Yeah.
But the problem is that while we want immigrants to come to the United States to be a part of this society. I mean, I am an immigrant myself. Let's do it legally, okay? Now, fine. We don't want people taking 16 years like I did to become a citizen, okay? I'm totally against that. There's something wrong with the system when it takes 16 years to become a citizen. However,
if you hadn't spent 13 of them in prison, Leon, it might have gone faster. So
there you go. That's right. It's true. That's true. Right. So, but if we can put in place a system where people can come here, they can have all the opportunities they're looking for and all that, put in place where you can have a system where we could get it down to 8 years or maybe 4 years or something like that. Whatever. I don't know what the number is, but something that allows people to migrate to the United States, but do so legally. I don't want people getting up in other countries all over the world, wherever the hell they wake up tomorrow morning and decide, well, you know what, I'm going to go to the US today. And all of a sudden you could just walk across the border and we taxpayers are on the hook for this damn nonsense.
Yeah.
No.
Well, yeah, but that's where the sad thing is. If you just eliminate the welfare state or give a different deal to people who are migrating so that there is no early incentive, then you could just kind of open the borders and say, hey, look, if you're a criminal, we're going to screen you out. But otherwise, you come in, you want to work for somebody wants you to work for them. Well, why does it matter? I mean, if you buy something from Walmart, you're essentially employing somebody in another country anyway. So, I mean, what does this matter? Whether or not they come over here or not. I mean, the bottom line is, and it cuts down our liberty too here, because some of us maybe want to engage with people who are coming from over there. And if the government stands in the way, then they're cutting down on my liberty to do that as well. So it's just a terrible thing. But, it's expensive too. And one of the things I wanted to jump into from this whole war thing and our diversion into the immigration issue is debt. We're just piling on the debt like there's no tomorrow. And it makes you wonder, maybe that's the point of the war. Maybe there is no tomorrow is where they're headed. But maybe you could bring up the visual, James, on this. So, it said there was an article last year that said Senator Rand Paul mocks the massive $1.7 trillion bill as hazardous debt. And I kind of like the picture because it reminiscent to me of the free to choose picture, I think, of Milton Friedman standing by all those boxes of paper from the federal government. This is just one bill. This isn't. So, I mean, look at that stack. Do you think anybody's going to read that? Do you think even Nancy Pelosi's going to read it after she passes it? I mean, really, but it's absolutely insane the amount of money we're spending. And, our Congress is telling us, hey, look, this is kind of dangerous, where we're headed with some of this stuff. This is a chart of debt to GDP. And it shows, that our own Congress is telling us if we just keep going status quo, the debt is going to overwhelm our productivity. It's just going to, shoot off into the stratosphere here at some point. And it's funny, too, because this is their 2022 outlook. And they've kind of cut off the back of this graph, which really helps to see a little better about a perspective of where we're coming from. And if you look, it's all of these crazy wars and other government fiascos that have caused us to fall into so much debt. And this is, debt to GDP. So, I mean, keep in mind, the productivity is masking some of this spending, some of this debt. And if we look here at World War II, that was the worst case we were in before. And we've talked about this on the show before, but we're there. We're literally at the worst point of our history as far as our debt to GDP goes. And what have we got to show for it? I mean, we funded a lockdown. We funded a war in Iraq. We've with pallets of cash just disappearing. Well, what are we? What do we have here? A banking bailout. I mean, this is dangerous stuff. And I mean, whose hands do you really trust these guys who are there to figure this stuff out? I'll kick this to you guys.
Short answer, no.
I'm going to go back to Tim's line beforehand where he talked about free, because you talk about just a bastardization of the word. If you look at what free was, free to choose was literally, hey, the ability to be unconstrained in what you wanted to be able to do for yourself, without any limits upon you there. And you flip it around to the other side and it's, hey, what can others do for me? That's free for me. That's what I'm looking for.
Yeah.
And, that comment that there's no such thing as a free lunch is well displayed on this graphic.
Yeah. But then the question becomes, what do we do about it, right? I mean, we are living. This has been going on for quite a number of years. This continue massive increases in the debt burdens that are being placed upon us and placed upon our children and grandchildren. And what kind of country we're going to leave behind? This generation is going to leave behind. The boomer generation is going to leave behind, when we are leaving this debt burden upon our future taxpayers with our children and our grandchildren. We are heading into some really dangerous waters here, and we don't know what's going to happen on the other side.
Yeah. Well, it really hammers home the point too, where you said there's no free lunch. I mean, the free lunch is coming at the expense of lunch tomorrow. It looks like, when we look at that graph,
Exactly.
that's eating into tomorrow's lunch. But go ahead,
Yes.
Tim. You were about to jump in.
Oh, what was I going to say? I can't remember now.
Sorry, I ate your lunch there.
You did. You ate my lunch.
That was a free lunch. Definitely.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, something that Leon had said at some point that he had made, but that's okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Well, this debt issue, I mean, it's literally something that, people have got to address. And I guess with the, advent of this new House that has been elected, at least maybe it looks like there's going to be a little reform in the sense that they're going to, instead of these omnibus bills like Rand Paul was railing about in that first article we showed you, I guess they're going to be forcing a lot more of these bills to be independent and standalone. That sounds like what they're going to be doing. So maybe there's some hope of people being able to have the courage to vote against some of these things. I don't know.
I think the borrowing, though, Jason, you've still hit that one there. The only reason we've been able to get away with that was, well, for a few years, the Fed essentially went out and bought all the borrowings and expanded its own balance sheet. All that did was stave off the inflation. Inflation should have been here years ago. We're just starting to see that now. I don't know where that ends up in terms of inflation right now. In terms of borrowing money that we don't have, we're just printing money. We all know exactly how that one ends. The only saving grace is in the world economic system that everybody else was doing it too. So what you have is this total global inflation, if you will, that is masking a lot of these troubles. And I don't think I haven't seen any nation yet that you could say is the solid nation who's going to stand out there and that would become the global currency, if you will. So the fact that there's still demand for the U.S. currency as global currency, and the fact that every other nation went into the same exact barrel roll that we've been going into is the only saving graces. But if you look at this from an inflationary standpoint, this should have been with us years ago, 10 years ago, even back when we started the Great Recession. This stuff should have been with us 10 to 12 years ago. We're just starting to see it now. I don't know where it ends.
Yeah.
Well, my cynical
one
self.
of the things. I'm sorry, Tim. Go ahead.
Just my cynical self would say that looking at history and the collapse of all fiat currencies eventually, even the best, it looks to me, as my cynical self would say, that it's just a matter of time before we have a collapse of the monetary system in the United States. So the dollar itself collapse. But a lot of people have been predicting that for quite a while, and of course you've got a lot of historical reference that you can make that claim. But that's what I think, and I don't think there's anything we can do about it, because this is what happens when governments go nutcase, like ours is doing right now. And to think that we're immune to it because we're the great United States is again ignoring history.
Yeah, and I don't think you can just put your money into Uruguay and forget about it. I don't know where the other outlet is. That's the problem.
Yeah.
And one of the things that no one is speaking about is the unfunded liabilities that we do have. I mean, and that is massive.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that chart that I was showing of debt to GDP, that was only sort of what's on the books, not the promises we've made to ourselves in the future as well. So, and those are scary numbers. I mean, if you check out the debt clock or any of those others, you can see that the amount that if you were to charge every citizen an equal portion of the debt, it's literally like $100,000 a piece. I mean, that's literally what we're all on the hook for, and that doesn't account for things like Social Security and stuff. So I mean, we're literally just fantasy land, the idea that this stuff is going to get paid back.
The worst part there, Jason, is that if I were a betting man, I'd pay that money today if it meant I didn't have to owe another dime again in the future, because you can't see it getting better.
Yeah, it's just I think it's scary times, and it's funny too, because I think a lot of people, it's funny, they've been taught, and James, maybe we could get the visual back up. Like if you think about the crises like climate change that they're talking about, and they always go to the hockey stick and say, wow, look at carbon dioxide, it is just shooting up in the last 100 years. Well, I mean, I think, or James, maybe we could get that visual back up again. So what we're seeing here, the CBO is telling us we're about to have a hockey stick on debt. That's literally what they're telling us. And everybody who is like literally totally panicked about one thing is completely not panicked about something that we have a lot more control over. I mean, all we have to do to forestall this is just be a little bit more modest about the scope of government and say, hey, maybe government doesn't need to do all the things it's doing. Maybe we can, freeze or cut spending a little bit, and we can avoid this. But everybody is like, you'd almost call them a debt denier, maybe, is what a lot of these people are. I don't know. So, but it's funny, that is sort of a good segue to another topic we have, which is the government telling us about a new crisis, and that's a crisis.
Jason, before you leave this topic though, I think if we can get the federal government to stick to its constitutional mandates, I think we'll be okay.
Yeah, I suppose. It's just that if the mandates are squishy, boy, I tell you, they find a new way to say that everything is related to something government.
We're gonna have to we're gonna have to describe general welfare better for them, Leon, I think, in order to get out of that. So
valid point. Yeah. Valid point.
Yeah, it's too bad they didn't mention positive and negative rights in the Constitution. That might have solved a lot of this. Instead, we all believe we have a positive right to a whole bunch of things, which is a whole nother deep dive. But I tell you, as far as we talk about crises that keep seeming to come up, and one of the things they've brought is regulators have recently been talking about. I think it was a consumer products I can't remember.
Consumer Product Safety Commission.
That's it. I was pulling a Biden there. Sorry. Maybe it was that picture of Biden on the other page. It was contagious. But the regulators were telling us essentially that the gas stoves that most of us have been exposed to all of our lives, and certainly are ubiquitous in restaurants, these things are now dangerous. That there's a high correlation with childhood asthma, apparently. And so they're saying, okay, we want to ban these things. But just as they were starting to discuss that, there was a huge backlash. And then the Biden administration came out and said, okay, well, we're not trying to ban these things. But it does, bring up the point, one, it's sort of like they're just continuing to look for more and more things to add more and more expenses onto the pile. When we look at that debt that we've got, how expensive is that going to be to tell people to rip out all the gas stoves out of their homes and electrify everything? It just seems like we're creating, I guess, crises everywhere when we don't necessarily have to have these crises everywhere, and the debt is just getting tremendous because of all this crises chasing, I guess you might say. What do you guys think about this? It's also too kind of one hand doesn't know what the other hand is doing in government. I mean, the agency literally comes out and says, this is what we should be doing. And Biden says, no, I guess we shouldn't.
Back to the administrative state and the growth of the administrative state, because there's where you see it. And then you have, and I believe that if there was no outrage, then they would have gone the next step and said, these things have to be banned. But because there's outrage, somebody just tosses the idea out there to see what's going to stick or what's going to float.
Yeah.
And that is a huge danger, but it goes back to, this is an administrative agency going about essentially creating law. And then not only do they create the law, but they get to enforce the law. And then they get to be the judge, jury, and executioner after the fact. So,
yeah.
But notice where, in those articles that he posted, in the name of climate change, look at the damn nonsense they want to do. They want to infringe upon our freedoms and our liberties. They want to come into our homes and tell us what we should cook and what we should not cook with. All of a sudden, gas stoves and gas ovens are becoming dangerous to our health and the health of our children. It's linked to asthma and all that kind of stuff. It is in the name of climate change they're doing this so-called climate crisis that we have, that they're trying to do this. And what's very, very interesting about this, where is the evidence to support their contentions? Actually, the one study or the two studies they have, they were all completed by people who are part of this whole climate crisis movement, who are trying to take away all our rights and freedoms to tell us they're going to solve the problem. They're going to solve the climate problem. God help us with these people.
Yeah, I think that guy, what's that guy's name? Klaus, Klaus
Schwab, I think of the
World
Schwab,
World Economic Forum, right? Yeah.
Yes.
I think Leon's correct. I mean, that's the major goal there, is to completely reduce the standard of living of everyone all the way across the world, but especially us, rich societies in Europe and the United States and Canada and so on. And that's the main idea right there. And so that's all part of it. Not just the woke stuff, which is all part of it. That's all part of this whole thing. Get used to, you will live a much lower standard of living. And not only that, but you'll love it. And so that's the main agenda here. You won't cook on, from Neanderthal times to today, mankind is hardwired genetically to cook over fire, and fire is the best way to cook from someone that likes to cook. And I do have a gas stove, and I can show it to you, but I'm not gonna. But I'll just let you imagine that.
Be like weapons, Tim. You don't want to show anybody you got that anymore. So.
I don't know if I'd go that far, but yeah, you don't want to if you're smart, but I'm not that smart. But anyway. You got to cook over fire. This whole electric stuff is a bunch of crap.
And then the other thing too. I mean, they want this electrification of the United States. Where the hell is all the how are we going to get this electricity? How are we going to get it? How are we going to get all of this massive amount of electricity? You think wind and solar is going to provide us with this stuff?
Oh, for sure, of course. Yeah,
I'm going to start a farm in Manitoba. Because actually, after climate change, Manitoba is going to be a really nice place to live. And Leon, I'm going to have a bunch of hamsters with wheels to help develop all the electricity.
Yeah,
it's going to be needed.
Going to need them.
But so
Well, Tim,
exactly.
as a rebuttal to your stovetop need for a fire and a stovetop, I think the left would tell you that you don't need a gas stove to cook a cricket sandwich. Is that
right? Yeah, you're right. Exactly.
So,
probably not. Yeah, exactly.
Those mealworms are just fine. You eat them raw.
You don't need a gas stove to cook your misery. Okay, that will come because of the destruction of our liberties and our freedoms.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah, but just in case you think this stuff couldn't happen. I mean, we literally just lived through COVID, where we saw all kinds of things that happened in the name of health, where they would just take away your rights to things. So, I don't think we can say anything is beyond the pale, right? But
people were just and are still today love it. I mean, they just not only were they allowing it to happen, but they were cheering it on. It's like how wonderful this is.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Well, trust these guys to take us down paths that just Alice in Wonderland. They don't make any sense at all. Sort of through the looking glass.
When you see AOC supporting something as nice and wonderful, we have a serious problem, because that empty-headed idiot never know what she's talking about. Okay, so if she's supporting it, then we have a real problem.
But Leon, I'm going to tell you, that is one of the most dangerous people in the United States, but not for what you think. What's dangerous about her is that she's only going to get better the more time she gets on screen, on camera, and more coaching. So the vacuousness is never going to go away, but she's only going to get better at the messaging. So
good point. Yeah. Very good point. Yes.
Well, speaking of vacuous, empty heads, we're getting near the end of our show, and that's the time for our Knucklehead Noise Patrol. And so we brought in a quote from the most vacuous empty head out there, and he happens to be leading our country at the moment, which is pretty scary. And he's literally the big classified document scandal that we've been having recently. I mean, if in case you haven't been following it, Trump, for whatever wisdom he has, decided he needed to take a bunch of documents that were classified. And the question is, well, did he declassify them or not? I mean, he's claiming he did, and who knows? But he took these documents to his private residency after he finished his presidency, and he didn't want to give them back. Then I guess the archive found out he had them, and they said, okay, we want these documents back. And so there's been an ongoing back and forth to the point where they at some point raided his Mar-a-Lago compound to find these documents. And so let me bring you a video that I want to show you that, because it's going to lead to some, just craziness with Biden here. So you have to just give us a...
The FBI spread the documents out on a floor to make a record of what was found. When you saw the photograph of the top secret documents laid out on the floor at Mar-a-Lago, what did you think to yourself, looking at that image?
How that could possibly happen. How anyone could be that irresponsible.
So there's Biden saying, God, you take these documents and you keep them in your private residence, and boy, is that irresponsible. So
I feel the H word coming on.
Yeah. Well, so jump forward. It was now about 6 months, 5 months, something like that. And now, lo and behold, surprisingly, after the midterm elections, we find out Biden has a whole bunch of classified documents that he took while he was vice president, and there's no way he could have declassified these things. So they're clearly, he shouldn't have had them in these places. And they've been popping up all over the place, even apparently in his garage. Next to his Corvette.
Next to his Corvette.
And so Peter Doocy was at the White House, and he, of course, the White House press corps, sort of the three blind mice, I guess. So most of them are, and Peter Doocy, who's the only one who's willing to ask real questions there. So here's a question of Peter Doocy asking Biden about his classified documents that he's just leaving in boxes sitting next to his Corvette in his garage.
Classified material next to your Corvette? What were you thinking?
Let me, I'm going to get a chance to speak on all this, God willing, soon. But as I said earlier this week, people, and by the way, my Corvette's in a locked garage. Okay, so it's not like you're sitting out in the street. But at any rate, yes, as well as my Corvette.
Well, thank goodness it's with his Corvette in a locked garage. I'm sure that anybody who wants to get at those classified documents is, oh my God, it's in a locked garage. Okay, I guess we'll have to pass on
The genius
those.
of this, though, Jason, the genius is if I was going to break into his garage, I'd steal the Corvette. I mean, that's what
That's true.
That's a better point than I've ever heard Biden come up with.
Yeah. Well, I'm just waiting for him to say that, hey, they were in the Corvette and the Corvette was locked too.
That would have been irresponsible. I can't believe how irresponsible that would have been.
You can't put too many documents in a Corvette. You can't put anything in a Corvette.
It does bring up the point, though, that, I've heard other people like Glenn Greenwald and others bring up this, but it's the idea that, hey, look, the government just willy-nilly classifies a million things. So it's possible that these documents that both Trump has and that Biden has may or may not be important, and we'll never know because apparently we're the only ones who don't get to see them. It seems like Chinese spies, everybody else, they all seem to have a direct line into this stuff, but as a public, we're the only ones who this classification matters to, and would be arrested, because it doesn't sound like at this point, I'm guessing that neither Trump nor Biden will be prosecuted now that Biden
they can't prosecute Trump now, and they can't prosecute Biden now, because of course Biden is a Democrat. Remember, the letter of the biggest Democrat of all at the time was Hillary Clinton. The letter of when she did some of the most disgraceful things you could think with classified information. Now that issue you're raising there, Jason, about over-classification, that is a serious problem in the United States. I totally agree with that. However, the fact of the matter is these documents were classified. Even though we may agree that over-classification is a problem, they were classified documents which should have been treated as such. Now, on the issue of Trump, now Trump was president. He had the power to declassify stuff. Now, I'm not here to defend Donald Trump. I'm just talking about the law. He had the power to declassify stuff. Now, if the Department of Justice thought that, well, they were not declassified, well, this is an issue to be litigated in court. They can't willy-nilly just run and raid the man's place, which is what they did. Of course, they know that Trump had the power to declassify stuff. And if they disagree, you litigate that in court. But instead, they raided this place. Look at Joe Biden now. Joe Biden, we know for sure, had no power to declassify this information, none whatsoever. So there's no issue there. But where's the raid?
Yeah.
Where's the raid on his home or in this so-called Biden Center, the Penn Biden Center, which looks nothing like a money?
I'm gonna print out an H and I'm gonna just hold it up every time someone.
Okay, cool, very good, very good.
Well, Leon, that's the funnier part of all that everybody's missing. This was a think tank, and about the only person who was in it apparently was Biden. I just can't imagine what's going on in that think tank.
This think tank is looking more and more like a money laundering operation to enrich the Bidens. That's all it's looking like. Okay.
Yeah.
So, but the point is though, where's the raid? Okay. I can see the issue. I can see the issue with Trump in the sense that the National Archives wanted the documents back. Fine, no problem. But you're still dealing with somebody who had the power to declassify. So that is an issue to be litigated in court. I can see that issue. I'm not arguing that issue. But where's the raid on Joe Biden, who we know had no power to declassify? Where's the raid on Hillary Clinton, who also had no power to declassify? Where's the raid? Yes, Tim, you need to put up your 8 sign. Please put it up quick.
Yeah, I will. I got to get that. I don't know. This doesn't work very well. And my only comment would be that I'm in a continuous purging of paperwork in my own life and house and garage. I purged reams of paperwork I no longer needed.
Any classified?
Well, only to me.
Only
to me.
Yeah.
Yeah, only to me. But why? What motivates anyone to want to put more boxes of junk in their garage is beyond me. That's my only point.
Well, but the overall theme of what we've been talking about too is just whose hands are the right hands for any of this. And you got to realize, if we're just talking about the two guys who were literally running the whole show and they can't even follow the rules, and maybe they're even holding sensitive, important documents in willy-nilly fashion, it just makes you wonder. I mean, whose hands are the right hands? But as we wrap up,
what about Rob? I want to hear what Rob thinks about this document thing.
I was going to say I got mine in with the Biden in the garage thing. I still think you got to steal the Corvette before you steal any of the documents.
That's good. That's a good one. I like that one. That's true.
But I think Jason has probably my point. Honestly, it's every day everybody is going to commit something that we're going to break the law somewhere. There's too much law. There's too much of this stuff. There's too much government. So the only way that we look at this stuff here, I love the H sign though, Tim. I think if you don't make one up, I'm going to make one up myself.
Okay.
You need it nowadays.
But I have no clue in terms of why any of this is actually it's just stuff to put in front of us. I think to camouflage some of the real issues that are out there, and we've been talking about those. Out of control spending, out of control debt, etc. Personally, I don't care if they had classified information at their house, because most of the classified information is probably not worth being classified.
Well, Ian, I think that's probably a good note to end on. And Rob, I wanted to give you one chance real quick just to give a shout out for your program here. And maybe you can bring up, James, the website. There it is, Free to Choose. Rob, do you want to give any last words about what's going on there? And
I was going to say, just freetocoosenetwork.org. We are the film studio that brought you Milton Friedman's original Free to Choose, still making quality public television documentaries and short videos. If you click on the watch button, everything we have is available to watch at no cost on our site. Also, I wanted to give a quick shout out, Jason, to my pal Mike Surdick from the Advocates for Self-Government. He's the guy who told me that this would be one heck of a fun podcast to come on to. So,
awesome. All right. Okay, well, thank you, Mike.
And then I hope we lived up to your expectations then.
Well, mostly I want to see if Mike actually watches this entire podcast to find out that I gave him a shout out. So.
Awesome. Well, thank you all thank you for joining us today, Rob, and thank you all for watching. And until the next one, stay free.
Thanks, Jason.
Yes,
bye, Jim.
Life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, always and forever.
Thank you for listening to the Knuckleheads of Liberty podcast. Find us on Facebook, Rumble, YouTube, your favorite podcast network, and at knuckleheadsofliberty.com.